It's 1975 and the communists had taken over Laos. During that time, we live in a village called Vang Jun near the village of Phongjin. The communists had ordered everyone to surrender their weapons. Our village had a meeting about the weapons and agreed to not turn the weapons over to the communists and to hide the weapons and keep it for our safety. After hiding the weapons, we continue on with our lives as normal, and for the most part everything was normal until November. Suddenly we heard a massive shootout at the village of Phongjin that was not too far out from our village. The communists blame our leaders for organizing resistant activities. And I can say that our leaders did indeed encourage us to resist the communists. It was their saying and encouragement that made us to decide to stay in Laos when nearly majority of the Hmong loyal to the collapsed royal government had already started fleeing to Thailand for safety. When the other village nearby was attacked, everyone became concerned that our village could be next, and so everyone in our village started packing up whatever they can and fled into the forest mountains. During that time my wife was pregnant with our first child and she was weeks out from going into labor. Majority of our tribal relatives fled north of Phongjin and hide in that forest going up to Mount Jun in that area, while some fled all the way to Han Na Pai. Me and my family fled to Mount Jun, and during the journey to Mount Jun my pregnant wife was getting extremely tired, so I told my dad that my wife is struggling and slowing everyone down and that they should go on ahead and that we will slowly follow from behind. But my dad said no and that we will all go slowly at your wife pace. But Grandpa and my uncle said that if we're going to be slow, then they're going to go on ahead first, so my grandpa and my uncle along with his family went on ahead. They were so fast that eventually we lost sight of them. My grandpa and uncle and his family went all the way to Honan Pai, while me, my dad, my two brother along with my mom and wife stay at Mount Jun. We live like that for 6 days separate from them, and on day 6 my dad told us that we're running low on food and that we may have to go back to the village to harvest some rice. Right at that moment 5 Hmong guys with rifles arrive at our location. They were from the Tao clan under tribal leader Green Yia Tao, and they were out on a patrol. My dad told them that we're low on food and that from their perspective is it safe to go back to the village to grab some food. They reply saying that it's best not to go back, saying that if you're really out of food and have no choice then be careful going back to the village, and that to wait for the night before entering the village and to stay out of the open. Immediately my older brother said that he will go back for food, saying that for me and dad to stay and look after mom and my wife, and that he and my younger brother will go back for food. My brother Gil Pao is older than me, but he hasn't gotten married yet, and my younger brother Zao also, so if anyone was going to go, let it be them. But then my dad wouldn't allow it and order all 3 of us brothers to stay and that he will go alone. But my older brother Gil Pao didn't like that decision, and it started getting into an argument debate. My mom then spoke up in anger and said that for my dad and my youngest brother to go back for food and to stop arguing. So that's what we did. My dad and my little brother pick up their rifles and headed back to the village for food. My younger brother was carrying his M16 while my dad was carrying his M1 Garand. As my dad and my younger brother Zao left for the village to get food. That day and into that night I couldn't help myself but kept staring down that path that they left on and in hope that they will return. That night I just couldn't sleep at all and was extremely worried for them both. The next day around afternoon they both finally came back, and finally I was able to relax myself. They came back harvesting 2 bags of rice and 3 chickens for us to eat. Not even a short time later my grandpa and uncle came down the path to us. My grandpa checked on us and told my dad that if daughter-in-law is able to walk, then for us all to follow them to Han Na Pai. But my dad refuses to go, saying that there's plenty of other Hmong people also hiding here and that being here is also closer to the village, so it's easier to go back for food, saying that we will continue to stay here until we really can't anymore. My grandpa then got mad at my dad and said to my dad that is he really going to abandon families now, in an angry voice. My dad replies saying that my grandpa is being too overly dramatic and say that my daughter-in-law is about to give birth anytime now, and if we go to Han Na Pai and run out of food it will be too far to come back for food in the village, and said that some of our tribal relatives are also still here hiding here. At this point my dad was also getting mad and said to my grandpa that if we really weren't able to stay here we would have followed you guys already even if you didn't ask. My uncle didn't mind us staying here, but my grandpa didn't want us to stay here. My grandpa eventually gave up on trying to convince my dad and said that they're going back to the village for food. As my grandpa was getting ready to go, right at that moment I remembered that I totally forgot about my wife and our wedding money gift. I totally forgot, so I told my dad that I'm going back to the village with grandpa and uncle. My dad looked at me in confusion saying, "For what?" So I told him and he said, "God damn it, all right, go with them and be careful." My dad told all of us to not enter the village until nighttime. I picked up my M1 carbine and follow my grandpa and uncle who both carry M16. When we made it to the village, we made our way down to the edge behind Green Yia Tao House. We lay there and waited for nighttime, but a few hours into waiting, my grandpa, still enraged, said to us loudly, "Let's go, there's no fucking communist." Saying that if we had gone into the village a while ago, we would have been already done and would already be heading back already. My uncle told my grandpa to calm down and to wait for nighttime, but my grandpa replies angrily, "I'm not scared." He proceeded to get up and started walking right into the village with no care in the world. At that point, uncle had no choice but to follow my grandpa into the village also. I watch as both of them head into the village and vanish from my sight. I decided to continue to stay low under the bushes and to wait for nighttime. But as I waited and waited and waited, I heard nothing and saw nothing suspicious, so I told myself grandpa and uncle have left for a while now and nothing bad had happened, so maybe it is safe. The sun was also setting too, so I decided to get up and head into the village. I went straight to our house and went straight to grab the money and immediately got out. As I was walking away, I noticed that my mom chicken had just hatched her egg and there were a lot of chicks, so I decided to grab a bag and put the chicken and her baby chicks into the bag so I can take them with me. Suddenly I heard a banging sound coming from my uncle's house. I quickly went to his house and saw my grandpa and my uncle pounding the rice plants to get the rice. They both had about 2 large full bag of rice, and when they saw me, my grandpa decided to call it good and said, "Okay, let's go." We quickly left the village and head towards the same path we came, and that was a big mistake. I followed my grandpa about 10 feet behind when all hell broke loose. When we got closer to the forest, my grandpa suddenly stopped and froze and started staring really hard towards the forest as if he had spotted something, which he did, but by that point it was too late. The communist troops opened fire on us and grandpa got hit and immediately fell down. As I immediately turned away to run, bullets began hitting all around me as I ran back towards uncle and ran into him, pushing him backwards, telling him to turn back around and to run. As uncle turned to run, bullets began hitting right around us, and I saw the bag of rice that uncle was carrying get hit and the rice splattered as uncle immediately tumbled forward and went down. I jumped over him and kept running along the edge of the village as the communists keep shooting at me, and now bullets were hitting in front of me and hitting the fence ahead of me. I then immediately stopped running towards that direction and turned and started running the other way down the other edge of the village, and in my surprise I saw uncle running ahead of me. I watched uncle ran up a little path into the forest on the other side, so I ran after him. Once I caught up to uncle, we ran up that mountain, which is a local cemetery mountain, and that gave me mad chills, especially with the sun setting. But that was the only way out. We slowly made our way to a path that was towards the end of the village, and by that time it was nighttime, and uncle said to me that we don't know if your grandpa is still alive or dead, so we will wait here tonight and see if your grandpa come. To me, I clearly saw grandpa getting shot and fall, but in my mind I also thought uncle was shot and yet he made it, so we will wait and see. We stay up all night, and by daylight I told my uncle that I don't see grandpa and that we should get going. But my uncle insists we stay until the afternoon, and if we don't see grandpa then we can go. Uncle then got up and walked down to the path and walked about 10 yards down that path towards the village. From my position I can see his back but couldn't see beyond that. As we sat there and waited, my stomach began to growl because we haven't eaten anything all day and night. By this time it's already past afternoon, and noticed that uncle haven't moved at all. In fact, he hasn't moved even an inch. He was as stiff as a tree trunk. So I got up and went down to the path, and once I was on the path and stared down the path towards my uncle, I can see a communist Vietnamese soldier on the same path crouching and looking towards our position. Just as I was thinking in my mind, "Oh shit," my uncle opened fire, shooting 4 times at the communist Vietnamese soldier. Then my uncle immediately got up and ran back towards me and ran right by me and took off running, and I immediately took off after him. As we ran away, all kinds of weapons started opening up behind us. We eventually made to safety and slowly made our way back to my dad.